Okay, so next slide. Today specifically, we're talking about alcohol, gaming, and tobacco paraphernalia. The majority from this morning's session was centered around alcohol. Gaming and tobacco paraphernalia aren't, there's not a whole lot of, I guess, substantial changes or needs for change in those that we really recognized or really that was spoken to by this morning's group anyway, but I'm more than happy to talk in detail if you have any questions on that. As I said, most of it surrounds around alcohol. So what I've done is, next slide, is basically broken this out into sections that we can kind of talk about and identify things that we've noticed and things that we've heard complaints about, things that we think are in need of a review. Maybe they're inconsistent, maybe they're confusing. So I'm gonna kind of break these down and then just feel free to jump in and ask questions as needed. Alex, there are people in Zoom, right? We can see a couple. Okay, and just keep an eye on that. If you're listening on Zoom, just raise your hand and we'll let you in and you can answer or ask a question. So first of all, prohibited activities. Next slide. This is a long definition, but at the end of the day, unlawful for any licensee of an establishment to permit the creation of noises which will unreasonably disturb any person or persons of ordinary sensibilities in any adjoining room or rooms, building, or premises. So that's very general. What's unreasonable to you may not be unreasonable to me and anybody else, right? So it needs to be defined a little bit more. We get a lot of questions on, well, I don't want to be in the wrong. What can I do to make sure that I'm not creating an unreasonable noise or, being a nuisance to anyone? Then we also get complaints. Well, this was really loud to me. Well, turns out it wasn't so loud to some other people that were right there. So this kind of thing, we're looking to fine tune, right? So I don't know if you've had any experience in the bar industry, in general cabaret license industry, to where you've had this, or if you have questions on it. If you have, the group this morning brought up the possibility of requiring certain decibel limits after certain hours. That's one way to look at it. And I'm not so positive that we can even put that in the business licensing code. It may have to go into the planning and land use code. But it's worth talking about. So if anybody wants to share anything with that, I'm glad to hear your comments. Yeah.
That's very vague.
Sure, exactly.
And so, I mean, just the term unreasonably disturbed.
Right.
I mean, it disturbs me.
Right.
Okay, I mean, and I don't know, I've been through this. I've been in the nightclub business in Reno for off and on 35 years.
Okay.
We've had in different venues, from the bowling stadium to Center Street to American Bandstand on Virginia Street to Tonic Lounge, where I am now, people who complain about noise, and then when you get to their balcony where they're listening to it, and you put a decimeter up there, not even close. 75, I think, is the number that you guys are using at this point.
Yeah, that's more of a code enforcement thing, but yeah, I think that's 65 is what I hear more often than not, but I think it's all case by case, depending on if there's a special use permit affiliated with the property. But yeah, it's not clearly defined in code, and that's the problem that we run into. So it creates a lot of questions.
Well, on my end of the program, I'm doing the best that I can to address that. I want to be a good neighbor. And so in my particular location, we're putting in sound dampening equipment right now. And there was a complaint about 2 or 3 months ago. I've since talked to that person, and now they're okay with it.
Okay.
And so a lot of it is just bar bad, resident good.
Right.
And until you meet and then work it out. And the nature of the program is that I am in the nightclub district, the nightlife district. And a lot of these people are moving into old casinos like the Comstock and the Flamingo Hilton, and it's like moving into the airport and complaining about the airplanes.
Right.
So I'm not, all I'm saying is that I'm having an issue with that being way vague, and I want to be a good neighbor, but I also don't want to be held to something that's completely vague, where you say, well, you're unreasonably disturbing them because they say they're being unreasonable.
Sure. Great. Thank you for that.
So like I said earlier, same thing, to where there's another thing you don't know about, where we talked about it before, if you get a new license, you're not supposed to have any live music inside your bar, either like a DJ or a band. That's the new code they passed last when it was a year ago during COVID. So now imagine a bar trying to make it after 11 with no entertainment, except for radio. I mean, that's a business killer. So now if your grandfather had the same license, never let it go away, keep renewing it, or we're in trouble, and that's terrible. So I can't believe they did that.
Now, are we talking about a cabaret? So for instance, next to me, a group called Eden just opened up. They were not closed for a year, so the cabaret license went with the business.
Right.
So they didn't lose anything.
Right, there's an entitlement with that property, yeah. So they have certain hours that were built into that original entitlement about 10 years, 12 years ago, something like that. So yeah, since they weren't closed for more than a year, they get to assume the grandfathered rights of that entitlement. So like he's saying, with something new, if someone brand new were to come, I was gonna go open up a bar that wasn't previously a bar. My cabaret license would only allow me to provide live entertainment until 11 o'clock. If I wanted to go past that, I'd need to get a conditional use permit. And that goes through the planning
That's
process.
additional permit.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's still possible,
yeah, it's still possible.
but additional permitting is needed.
Right, right.
So here's another example. Right next to me used to be Faces. They've almost been closed a year now.
Hmm.
If, let's say they wait another 4 months and then somebody comes in and opens it, they're only gonna be able to stay up until 11 o'clock.
Right, unless they get a conditional use permit.
They can stay open until
Yeah.
then, just no music is what you said.
Yeah, you could stay open all night, 24 hours, but you couldn't have any live entertainment past 11. Couldn't have a DJ, couldn't have a band, something like that. But you could go through that entitlement process, planning commission review and all that, and then it could be extended.
What is the additional requirements at that point?
You know, I'm not an expert on that. That's planning division and planning department that handles all that. But they take each case into specific consideration of what criteria they meet for what zone they're in, what adjacency issues they have, if any. Is there residential? Is there there's tons of steps and check boxes that they have to find. And then they come up with a recommendation, take that to planning commission, and then it gets,
Is any of that changing?
that part of it's all the same right now, conditional use permit stuff, as far as like what it takes to get it. But the process of requiring a conditional use permit for any activity after 11, that came into play about a year ago.
So for all the new people,
Right.
we're grandfathered. But then, like I said earlier, I seen you also have, it's at the discretion of the council. Did that go away or it's on the next?
That's
one?
on the next one, yeah.
Okay, because the thing is it's, like I said, it's too vague to where if they like you, they won't listen to it. If they don't like you, then your license goes away. Because, how many people don't have a complaint neighbor? Like I said, I would place on 4th Street during COVID. They approved 24 units next door. So who's gonna bitch and complain? The residents, even though they move into an entertainment district and industrial. So they should be able to dictate what the 25-year business is doing. And like moving downtown, like he said, they move into the casinos and they've changed them out. In Vegas, they do the same thing. They don't cater to the residents. You moved in an entertainment district. You can't move the train. You can't change the bell on Sunday. But here, unreasonable disturbance, which means adjoining rooms or building on premises. I mean, that's just nuts. So I don't want to see that either. Because it just, there's too much gray area there to where they can do what they want to do to target different businesses if they would like. Or if you have the most complaining neighbors and the bar next door will be closed, but if you're away from those neighbors, you can make it. Business is hard enough nowadays without all that going on.
Sure.
Said it again, because I know a few people that.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that. Any more comments or questions on this section right here? No? Anybody online? No? Next slide. So I'm not sure this will pertain to anyone on the call, but I'm gonna go through the Safescape area. This is a somewhat new chapter in the business licensing code. Safescape used to be in the land development code, Title 18, and it basically was a bunch of provisions to that each convenience store, needed to adhere to, like needed height markers next to the door, needed ATM certain distance from the doors, windows to be see-through. It's basically security measures. And then just this in the beginning of 2022, council adopted this and moved it over to Title V. And part of what they did is they added prohibited products. If you can see in this center area here, right here in the downtown area, that's where these products are not allowed to be sold at any time. Basically, your single serve alcohol, the little tiny guys, anything less than 375. Beers must be a specific size. Wine can only be full bottles. You can't be selling the little bottles. Then secondly, the buffer area, this orange and the green, all the same rules apply, but you can only sell, it's not completely prohibited. You can sell those items from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'm sorry, it applies from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. where you cannot sell it. You can only sell at night, okay? One other provision that was implemented with that is the 10% of floor space must be dedicated to fresh foods. There was a concern about food deserts and having convenience stores, liquor stores just being, their license as a convenience store and they were only selling liquor. So they added the 10% of floor space to be added for food. Now, since this has gone into effect just recently, July 12th of this year, like I said, it was voted in early 2022. They were given 18 months to come into compliance. It's recently gone into effect. It's really too soon on our side to tell what's working and what's not, if anything. But I do know that we get calls about what kind of products can be sold and why is it like this and what can we do to change it. So I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention in case they have comments on that or they would like to, share their experience or anything. So
I have a comment.
yeah.
Hold on 1 second. TJ, if you're there, you can unmute and then make your comment.
Hey Lance, it's TJ from Fireside. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Sorry, I came to the meeting earlier and I kind of blanked on a few things I kind of wanted to ask you about on this. Are we going over this as a way for the city to maybe change some of the ordinance?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible at this point. The book's completely open on what could change and how it could change. So I know this was a big sticking point for a lot of the businesses when it went into effect. And so, like I said, we've gotten a lot of comment on it. And so I wanted just to open it up for discussion. So yeah, anything you'd like to share is great.
So a few things I kind of want to go over that I didn't earlier. So as Chris mentioned in the meeting beforehand, a lot of people were losing pretty much sales from the get-go. Where alone, our store alone is down 30% in alcohol sales just off of this going through. As I mentioned earlier, it is getting people drunk faster rather than them coming in a lot more than buying the shots. But while they're buying shots, they're also buying food, so they're not getting drunk as quickly. So I kind of want to throw that out there as well. But a big thing that might help this kind of go into effect is that 20 ounce. A lot of the local breweries and everything like Revision, Depot, most of their cans are 19.2 ounces or 19.8 ounces. So I was wondering if there would be even a chance to maybe drop that 20 ounce to say 16 ounce. So this way we can cover those beers as well. Because that 0.8 ounces isn't going to make that big of a difference.
Sure. No, that's a great comment. We'll make sure to note that. I mean, I think that affects multiple people, not just obviously, like you say, the seller, but the brewer as well, if they're trying to sell those. So that's a good comment.
And then, so have you guys looked into how much this is dropping sales for everyone else? Or what kind of data are you guys getting from the past 4 months that's happened? I know it's not a lot to work with, but what data are you guys going to be looking at?
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at that. That definitely will be something that we would like to look into. We'd like to see numbers. It will also go on to the code enforcement side and the policing side, and like seeing what kind of difference, if any, they're seeing, in the downtown area and the buffer areas. But yeah, I think sales data is worth sharing because it really shows if what the effect is having on the local businesses. So
it's because I know a big thing of this from the business impact statement was the calls of service. So I was wondering if that goes down or if it even matters, because I remember a few weeks ago during the right way ones, the city council members pretty much said the calls of service when they were trying to reapply don't matter anymore. So is that still a thing, or do calls of service still matter?
Yeah, I'm not sure if calls for service are gonna be, I mean, I think that they have to probably looked at it in some form or fashion. How that gets looked at is probably gonna be collaboration with PD, code, and ourselves, just to kind of see like, what are these calls? If it's all, the type and the severity of the calls probably needs to be looked at. But again, like you said, council's looked at that stuff a little bit differently over the years, so we're still kind of figuring out exactly how we want to measure this and what makes the most sense as it all unfolds. So we're just tracking everything right now and
Okay.
hope to get some results, within the next few months to the next few months to year. So
And then one more thing, quick proposal is if they're gonna get rid of the mini shots, why not do package of them? You're still selling the same amount of liquor, you're just having them buy package, like a pack of 4, a pack of 6, or whatever they come in, instead of just buying one mini shooter. Just another thing to maybe propose.
sure, that's great. Thank you for
Yeah,
those.
appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else on that topic? Yeah.
I would like to pass on some comments from earlier.
Yeah.
First off, the call to service is all messed up. Because there's been closed businesses that had call to service and they tried to close them and they were closed. So that system's broken anyway in the first place. And I didn't know since when we become in charge of people's moral compass on what they want to do. And earlier I mentioned if they cleaned up the homeless issue, they would clean up all this mess because they're complaining about trash. Cruise around town and see where it's coming from. So if they clean up the homeless, and you should go after, I don't believe in business restrictions, they should go after the bad actors, not make everyone suffer for a couple people that's not running good business, so that's some of the things, but they're even taken away in this deal. The old liquor or the old license holders can't still sell, or can they?
They
And,
can.
oh, so you're not.
No,
gonna take
for
those away?
the mini shops and things like that, if they're, it doesn't matter how old or your license.
See,
was,
that's
that was taken.
unfortunate too. And I know you're just trying to do your job, so that if they clean up the homeless, they'd clean up this mess. And they mentioned another good point, and so instead of buying the little shots, more people are getting drunker because they'll buy the $7.50 and get wasted. And that's just to circumvent this deal. So just things to consider. And then they got the buffer zone, that's in the yellow. So it's a stepping thing to where it's less restrictive than inside instead of having a line. So that's what they were mentioning earlier too. I know you're trying your best, but if they clean up the homeless, it'd be a bunch of problems that we wouldn't have.
Okay, thanks. Yeah,
I would also echo cleaning up the homeless is, it's been a problem. I would say that, the lack of little bottles, trying to be snuck into tonic it's been good because of the lack of little bottles.
Lack of
trying to
availability.
come in the door.
sure.
And then I understand why, pack of 4, the homeless aren't gonna be able to buy 4,
Right,
they're struggling to buy 1.
sure.
But they're even, you'll have somebody walking down the street and they're getting ready to come into tonic and they'll ditch their beer on the side of the road to come into the club, and then the homeless guy will come up and drink the guy's quarter beer.
Right. Okay. Did you have your hand raised too?
Do you anticipate down the road those barriers?
Yeah, there's one there. Just take it. I'm sorry.
Do you anticipate those boundaries going further? Are you gonna leach them into?
Oh, you mean like, are they
farmers'
going to expand? No, at this point, there's been no discussion of that. I haven't even heard, one whisper about that.
Is there a clear defined map? That one is very hard to read.
Yeah, so basically if, we have this in GIS format, that's basically, it's essentially drawn down streets and we can identify it to anybody and show them where. But that's basically the line, the outline, and then the buffer around is 1,000 feet out. And that's all measured by GIS. That's all our, computerized, measurements and all that. But yeah, it's clearly definable.
Hey Lance, can we take a quick recess to swap out computers because this one's about to die?
Okay, yeah, can we just give everybody online
Yeah.
5 minutes, and if you get disconnected, just log back in, I
Yes.
guess. Yeah,
And I see that your hand's up, Sarah, so we'll get back to you in about 5 minutes if that's okay. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Earlier today.
Been muted?
Yeah, let me see where the participants are at real quick.
No. Didn't we crash?
All right, we're back.
We're gonna wait for Sarah.
Sarah's in there. TJ comes back. Okay, there we go. All right, everybody's back. Sorry about that. Okay, so was there any more comments on this before we moved on to the next section?
Let's get to Sarah and the.
Yeah, Sarah had a question there.
Alrighty, Sarah, go ahead and unmute yourself and then you can talk.
Hi, so I was there this afternoon, or I was there earlier, and I believe it's in this section where it talks about video surveillance and
Yeah, that's correct.
I don't recall right now, but I do know that it calls out a certain number of days that you have to have of video stored on the premise. So the Nevada Petroleum Marketer and Convenience Store Association want to take a look at that. Some of the best practices are 90 days, and I believe that this section does not call out like the quality of video, and we also want to take a look at that as well. So we
Okay.
want to set a standard for the video surveillance.
Okay, great. Thanks for that comment.
Hold on, TJ. Would
Yeah,
like to speak again? Okay, go ahead, TJ. Just unmute yourself.
So one thing that I'm not sure someone said during this was for the minis to be sold, it kind of takes away from the alcohol that they're consuming. The only issue on that is there are stores here that we can sell. We were selling minis at $1.50 when they were available to sell, and now we can theoretically sell fifths, the 750 milliliters at $3 and still make a profit. We're just choosing not to, so this way the homeless don't keep coming in and drinking more. But that's still a possibility where other store owners will start selling the higher end, the 750 milliliters for cheaper, which will also bring the homeless to drink a lot more. So the way we get rid of minis is going to really make them consume more alcohol as we move forward.
okay. That's interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, we don't want comments on that?
Looks like Chris had a
Oh, okay,
comment
Chris.
as well.
Okay, yep, go for it.
Okay, Chris, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Great comment, TJ. Thanks. I appreciate that. Hey, he's absolutely correct. And in other jurisdictions, what they have done to combat this is, people want to come in and they just want a shot or two to go home after work, to settle down. So what other jurisdictions have done is not gotten rid of the sale of minis. They've packaged the minis to, you can do a combination of 4 minis. You can do one of a kind, one tasting of a, whatever it is, a vodka, a whiskey, whatever. Or you can pick and choose 4 or so, and you qualify for that to purchase a mini, because some people don't want 100 milliliter. They don't want a 375. They just want that it's society, you guys, and they just want to take that little edge off and go home. They don't want to drink a 375 or 750. This, 1 or 2 minis gets them through whatever they're dealing with, and they go home. So we should put that on the table as well. I should have done that this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So cap rate license, we already jumped into this. We kind of beat it to the punch earlier when we were talking about some of our comments, but the cabaret license gets a lot, there's some confusion. We get questions on what actually constitutes live entertainment. And so, one of the things that we were looking at is making this a little bit more clear as exactly what is live entertainment. We had a lot of people, with the DJ trivia issue, late last year, early this year. That's considered live entertainment for the interpretation that the NRS definition. Ours is pretty lackluster, just says dancing, floor show, other live entertainment, singing. So we want to elaborate and make it clear, make it clear for whatever it is. Also, it's a little bit outdated, called a cabaret license. That confuses people sometimes. They think, first of all, they often will think like, oh, this is an adult cabaret. It's a totally separate issue. So like just updating, modernizing, things like that. But I don't know if you obviously have a cabaret license, so I don't know if you've had issues with the definitions or with the actual,
I always thought cabaret meant strip club.
right, exactly. Yeah. And that's what we get a lot, is that question, is like, why would I need that? I'm just doing music. And so, yeah, modernizing the language a little bit is part of that. But then this brings up, like was brought up earlier, unreasonably disturbs any person. It's pretty hard to define that, so we're looking for recommendations and comments on like how we can really enforce something like that. What should the language look like?
I like the cabaret license, so I want to make sure it's the same that the casino has, because then they'll pick on the bar owners and try to leave them out.
Right.
So we've always shared the same cabaret liquor license, and that's why years back, they tried to close us down early because they always favor the casino and to run the business to them. And I brought in the lawyers, said, try it, we'll sue. We share the same license, so just so it's called the same as they have. And we have entertainment and alcohol, just like the casinos. So that's why a new guy getting a license, when they're trying to shut them down early, I'd like to see how that'd hold up in court. But that's why we got the guy that was hired from Holland and Hart, from the city or the city manager that used to work there, and without going to bed, hired this guy for $700 and some an hour, one of his friends, to oversee this. It just, I don't know, it don't make sense to me. So I hope they keep it the same, and I hope they're fair, but at least I'm grandfathered in. But for the new ones, I don't see how they're gonna make it with one permit after another and the scrutiny and then at the council's leisure, if they don't like you, according to this, unreasonably disturbs, that's so wide open. What's unreasonable, what's not? I mean, or any adjoining room or building or neighborhood. I mean, like mine was an industrial area. I was the only one going at night around me. And now they put in 24 units next door. I mean, and they moved into that, an industrial area. So that just opens it wide open if it disturbs somebody. But you moved in, like I said, entertainment district, train, you can't move. But I don't know if they're gonna be reasonable on that. I hope they are, because things are resolved in court sometimes, but it's terrible. Business owners and property owners have to do that. I thought the city was here for us to help business owners so they can get revenue. And I know you can't make everyone happy. That's why I don't know why they're trying to make the couple in the downtown core complaining neighbors happy. But yet this affects everybody in this whole city that wants to go downtown, maybe if they did clean up the homeless, or there's lots of empty buildings they could fill up if they're business friendly. Like there's a lot of places, Mardi Gras and that, where there's tons of bars. I mean, that's how our downtown should be. Whatever business is successful, they should promote. And then let the other ones go away. Why, they got 5 bars there. He said, well, why not have 20 if that's successful downtown? I mean, you have to fill them buildings and create revenue and something for people to do. So this little group today decides what they're gonna do, the 10 earlier and us, and on each little thing. And then they'll say they have public input, but they're making decisions for the whole town. And Reno is more than the downtown core. It's everybody that lives in Reno, so I hope they consider that too.
Sure. Thanks. Okay, no other comment on that online?
No.
No, okay, let's scoot on to the next one. So this is just broken out just to show, these are all the types of alcohol licenses you can get in the city. Quick summary of that: manufacturer's license, wholesalers, dining room licenses, packaged alcohol, nonprofit, on-premise, caterer's license. Obviously you have an on-premise. We've spoken, you have tenants that have on-premise. I'm not sure anyone else in the room, but we're looking at verbiage changes to make it, make it more modern, and to maybe make more sense to people. A lot of people get confused on package. What's packaged alcohol? It's alcohol that you can buy for off-premise consumption, like at a convenience store or a grocery store or something like that. A lot of places call it off-site or, off-premise alcohol. The difference between dining room and on-premise being that food service must be provided. So if you're a restaurant, if you have a dining room license, you can only serve alcohol while there's food being served. Once that food stops, the alcohol's gotta stop. On-premise is more like a bar, where you don't have to have food involved. There's a lot of vagueness on where minors are allowed. Are they allowed in establishments that have alcohol, as long as there's food? If it's just a bar, minors aren't supposed to be hanging out in the bar. There's no technically business for them in there, so these are kind of things that we want to touch on, so that there's clarity for general people trying to run their business and for regulation for enforcement. So we have something to lean on and say, like, shouldn't have minors in here, this is a bar.
But that's where we're different too, because in a casino, you can bring your kids in and they have arcade rooms and bowling alley, you can drink a beer next to your kid.
Right.
And then they can rent it to banquet rooms, they'll have wedding receptions, there's booze and kids. So they should be careful with that.
Sure.
If someone's separating, if they have an all-age show and there's kids that just so 21 from this rope over, you're going into the bar and you stay in there and drink. And there's kids out there where you have a separate room, then that should be allowed, as it is everywhere else, there's plenty of law to support that, so I hope they're careful on that.
For sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any questions on these types of licenses, or are they, nothing, okay, all right, let's go to the next one. So as I said earlier, we'll talk a little bit about gaming and tobacco paraphernalia, but the gaming code in Reno is very small. It all relies upon NRS. They do all the regulating. When there's issues in casinos, we don't really get involved. If we spot something, we generally turn it over to the gaming control board, similar to our other types of privileged licenses. So we're not looking for a whole lot of change here, but we wanted to hear everybody out in case that there was, any recommendations or sticking points that we've run across in the past. Again, it's more of a language cleanup, and making sure we're just covered we're not having bad referencing to the statutes. We want to make sure that everything makes sense, because sometimes these things can get outdated really quickly and you reference a statute that doesn't exist anymore. So we just want to be careful about that. If there's no questions on that, we'll go to the next one. Tobacco paraphernalia. So we're looking at this as well. There's just recently, as of January, cigarette sales are for 21 and older in Nevada, and they do require a automatic or electronic ID reader for any purchase. So ours currently says this is paraphernalia. This is not tobacco, but we want to make sure that the products are not included in that. I don't know if they are included in that. We're trying to do our research right now on this with the state side to know if paraphernalia, pipes, hookahs, things like that, if you have to be 21 to purchase those, because at this time I'm completely unaware. But it did bring up comments about ID verification and juvenile employees. Our code says 18-year-old can sell the paraphernalia, but now that may need to be 21 as well. So those are some of the changes, more cleanup than anything. I don't have a lot of experience or a lot of complaints with this code. It's pretty quiet. Yeah, do you have a question?
They did make employees 21 and older?
They did, is that what you're saying?
I'm asking.
I don't know that.
To sell.
Yeah, I'm not positive. I'm assuming for cigarettes they may have, but for the products, I don't know that. You have to be 21 to buy the product. Obviously, that's I know for sure. Still trying to find out the strict answer. The NRS is a little bit.
How do I find that out? If an employee has to be 21 to sell cigarettes?
You can keep in touch with us. I have one of my staff members working on it right now.
Okay.
That have reached out to the state. We've been doing our research on NRS and just on like the frequently asked questions pages and stuff like that. And it refers to tobacco products. And it's like, okay, does that mean stuff you smoke, or does that mean stuff you smoke with? Like you know what I mean?
And does that also apply to chew
Right.
or all tobacco, or is it just cigarettes?
It could be just cigarette.
Nothing.
To my knowledge, and again, this cigarette stuff, like we don't regulate it, but I want to make sure that the paraphernalia side of it coincides. So yeah, we're working on figuring all that out. Did you have a comment on that?
So I have a tobacco route,
Yeah.
for vending machines.
Oh, okay.
It has to be in a
So you
facility.
know,
Yeah, so it has to be in a facility where 21 and over. And yes, the employee has to be 21 in order to sell it. I at one point had a machine out at the brothel out in Dayton, and they told me I had to take it out because the girls were only 18, yet the tobacco was 21.
Oh, so even the cigarette machines,
And-
you get 21 and over establishment.
so that leads me to another question. From what I understand, to sell alcohol, packaged alcohol in Reno, and under 18 to 21 can sell it if there's a 21 or older person on premise. Is that correct?
That's a state law too, and that's my understanding. There's a couple different
Would
scenarios,
it
right?
not
that
apply
we've
to
talked-
tobacco as well? I mean,
It very well could, but then again, they required these electronic verifications for ID for tobacco, but it's not required for anything else, so. Sometimes these statutes get implemented and not everything is, taken, it's not all considered together, so. Again, since it's not a Reno law, I don't know the specifics yet, I'm still trying to learn them, so we just gotta try to keep up with the state.
And the lobbyist was pushing it earlier and on the phone, but see, I don't agree with that. You should check people's IDs, because for each station, it's $2,500 out of your pocket for each register. And then she was promoting the one system, which then they'd have a monopoly in Galview. And that kid mentioned earlier on the different POSs for who's giving them the best deal on credit cards, and that it just seems, your ID is your ID, you get the new one, and and then do sting operations like you've always done, and you'd have to do even with the card holders. And like the bad actors, again, instead of making everyone pay for having two registers, there's $5,000 out of these people's pockets. Then do the sting operations on those that are selling to minors, because, there's always a way around things. They can use their brother's ID that looks like him and scan it, and then you're being tracked. As much as he says you're not being tracked, I don't wanna know, people to know where I'm going, what I'm doing, that's freedom. And they wanna track every little step by scanning and cash going away, and then credit card, it's just seems too much.
Okay, well, that's, that's useful information with the tobacco, just, knowing that anecdotally, that's nice, but, we'll be looking into a lot of the, what is actually required for our code for the purposes of the selling of this, the paraphernalia going forward, but, nothing, doesn't look like anybody's hands up online.
Nope.
Just go to the next one. So the next meeting, next Monday, same thing, 1 o'clock and 5:30. These will be the topics discussed. Mobile vending units is food trucks, pawnbrokers, secondhand dealers, that's like used goods, auctioneers, peddlers, special events. I expect to take up the majority of that meeting. Along with, that'll kind of encompass First Amendment stuff and, picture permits, motion picture permits, filming permits. Toy and booting companies, not so much. Sidewalk vendors, we're actually working on an ordinance currently. The state has implemented changes, so we had to keep up with that. We have to have that in place by the beginning of the year. So that's a process that's ongoing. And we'll have that probably in front of council within the next month or so. With obviously a chance to take a look at it while we're doing this whole rewrite. We'll get it in place and then we'll kind of look and see what's, if anything needs to be changed. So, I welcome any of you to attend those and share your piece, even if you don't have one of those licenses, maybe you've had interactions with, special events for that matter, taking this insight. Next slide real quick. So if you have questions or comments, you can send them to the email bocode@reno.gov, or you can go to the website reno.gov/business license, and there's links. There's actually a link on the front page of reno.gov, then on the business license page. It'll take you into the specific webpage built for this project. And there's a lot of information on there, downloads. We'll have these meetings put up there. All sorts of resources. So, and like I said, if you have any questions, you can always send us an email, and that's the best way. I'd say call, but we want it all, we want to keep everybody, we want to know all the comments in writing, so we can look back on it and say like, okay, this is what was hitting people. This is what people are concerned with. We don't want to forget stuff. We want to make sure we keep track of everything. So, with that, if you have any other general questions, happy to answer. Otherwise, that's all I got for you tonight. All right. Thanks for coming. Thank you.